all you guys out there, and welcome to 2024. Spurs had a brilliant end to the year yesterday with a 3-1 win against Bournemouth, and even better with Arsenal losing at Craven Cottage to Fulham 2-1. But I hope you all had a brilliant New Year's Eve. I hope you're all recovering well from last night's celebrations. But welcome to 2024. This is your New Year's Day live stream for you guys. I'm here with Barnaby Slater from the Spurred On podcast to talk about what happened yesterday, and we'll discuss the performance and what we thought about everything going on yesterday. We'll do Twitter reacts as well, reacting to how social media reacted to Spurs' victory. But without further ado, let's talk about just in general yesterday. It was a brilliant win for Spurs against a very informed team in Bournemouth. They were, coming into this game 8 Premier League wins out of their last 10 games. As Postecoglou said after the game, arguably the most informed team in the league yesterday. And obviously coming away with a victory by any means is brilliant. But in terms of performance level in general, how do you feel like we played yesterday?
Well, before I get into that, Sim, is it worth me mentioning first what we said in our match preview? When I said,
of course you're going to bring it up.
I believe I said I had a good feeling about it because when Everton came, they were on a good run and we stopped that. And then when I just felt like Bournemouth being on a good run and maybe we'd put a stop to that. And maybe I even said I thought it would be 3-1. Now, Sim, I remember you saying that you thought it would be a draw.
Correct.
Okay, so I just thought we'd better check that. Now, in answer to your question, and Happy New Year, everyone. I hope you all had a good night last night. Yes, the performance I don't think was any better than a kind of 6.5, 7 out of 10, but it doesn't really matter. And I don't actually think we're likely to get better performances than that while we've got so many key players in our spine out. It's just that's the reality of it. So this period of time is about showing the desire and like the cojones to get through difficult periods. And Bournemouth were incredible. I was very impressed. The way he's got them playing, I think, is kind of exactly the way that we like to play at our best. And they caused us danger all the time, but it doesn't matter. We got over the line. We got the 3 points. We scored some good goals. And I think actually as well, probably Bournemouth fans would have felt just as edgy when we were going forward as I did when they were going forward. So it's just my kind of Spurs fanness that made me feel all the time like they were going to score every time they were in our final third. But the expected goals showed that we had many more. It was like, I don't know, 2.5 or something or maybe 3 or something to us.
2.3.
2.3, there you go. So, the stats nerds would say that we deserve to win the game, and I'm happy to go with them.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that. And I think, first of all, in my defense for my prediction, I didn't know Bentancur was going to be back. And I think that definitely gave everyone a massive lift, especially when seeing the lineup. Like, there were rumours before a couple hours before kickoff that he might be involved in the game. No one really expected him to actually be starting the game, though. And to have that boost, especially going into January with Sarr, which we'll talk about in a minute, obviously bad injury for him, but Sarr and Basuma not going to be available for this whole month or for even maybe the beginning of February as well. To have him back, not just getting involved, but also starting games was absolutely massive. And I think it didn't just give... I think it gave all the fans a lift when seeing the lineup as well, but I'm sure it gave the players a lift as well. I mean, they must have known he was going to start, but I think it just gave everyone the mood kind of flipped going into this game. I felt once that lineup came up, it went from like a bit worried, informed Bournemouth team off the back of a bad defeat to Brighton. Are we going to cope? And then all of a sudden, when everyone saw Bentancur in the team, I think it gave everyone a massive boost and a lot more confidence that we're getting some players back and some of our most crucial players back. And to have him back, I don't know how he did it. He was supposed to be out for 2.5 months and he was out for 1 month.
Yeah.
I mean, how the hell has that happened?
Well, also very impressive from the club, I think, to not let anybody know that he was training all week. He trained from the Monday, apparently, every day.
The only one who let it slip was his wife.
And his wife did let it slip the night before, saying he's back. But I kind of took that with a pinch of salt, because sometimes you see a lot of those things where players' partners kind of put an Instagram post out and it doesn't really lead to anything.
People are now giving her a tier one.
She's tier 1. She's tier 1 gold medal. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm up for that. Fine. Give us some more information on Radu Dragusin, please. Bentancur's wife. Yeah, but I agree with you. Yeah, huge. And we've missed him. He's a Rolls Royce of a player. How did we get him for so cheap from Juventus? I'll tell you how. Paratici, criminal, amazing. Well done. Long may he continue with his consultation role at Tottenham Hotspur. And let's face it, it looks like we're getting our centre back from Italy again. So you can't tell me that he's not involved in that somewhere. But yeah, I think Bentancur is just a beautiful footballer. Also, I said to you before we went on air, we've got so many kind of South American players now who are happy to put it in and really kind of be quite spiky on the pitch as well. But he's just got a lovely, graceful way about him as well. And for me, what I loved about him being back yesterday more than anything is I knew that when Emerson Royal and Ben Davies had the ball at their feet, and especially Emerson Royal, actually, I knew that we would have a player who was always wanting to come and get the ball, especially him, but also Gio Lo Celso as well. So I felt a little bit calmer about the possibility of Emerson playing at the back. And we'll go on to it, but Emerson, I think, did pretty well. You know, he scared me at times, but he did well. And I do want to give a little shout out now, actually, because just thinking about it, how good Ben Davies is with the ball at his feet. We don't actually give him enough props for those, not only those driving runs he sometimes makes to kind of get 40 or 50 yards up the pitch when there are no other options on and then get it out to the wide left player, but also he plays those little balls through the lines. He's much better at it than I probably give him credit for. So I wanted to mention that. But yes, Bentancur being back, loved it.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I was saying, it gave everyone a massive boost. And in fact, it was his interception, wasn't it, from Neto's loose kick, which obviously set the ball rolling quite early on, gave us the lead. Giovanni Celso's tackle finds Papa Sarr. I was watching your watch-along highlights, and you were saying, why is he passing it? And you know what? I was saying the same thing to Ben at the time. I was like, why is he, Johnson's in, pass it. But I actually think, you know, watching it back, he played that to perfection, not just because he scored the goal, but I actually think he opened up the space really well. It was the right decision because the defender got dragged away to Johnson. He found the opening. Brilliant finish. And you know what? For that first half an hour as well, before Sarr went off injured, we were actually on. That was probably one of our best moments of the game. We were on top of that moment. We looked energetic. And that Sarr injury did really seem to, at the time, take the wind out of our sails a bit, didn't it? I think that it really did. There was a bit of a switch up in the game. Obviously, Sarr clearly very emotional because of he wants to go to the AFCON. Apparently, actually, the injury is not too bad, which is really good news for him. So hopefully he can still go. But in terms of the game itself, we were in control, I felt, albeit Bournemouth were threatening, but I felt like we were much more in control, very energetic. And then once Skip came on, for the next like half an hour, 40 minutes or so, that game definitely flipped. And I definitely think it flipped at that moment. Yeah,
totally agree. I think Sarr showed a kind of an energy about him in that first 20 minutes that had really been lacking in the Brighton game. And I'm the first to admit, on the watch along of the Brighton game, I was disappointed with him. I felt like he looked leggy. I worried that maybe he was thinking a little bit about the African Nations Cup and was kind of 2 or 3% off it. And I wondered whether then, based on that kind of first 20 minutes performance against Bournemouth, whether Ange had kind of said that to him, kind of said, look, you know, I know you want to go to this tournament and have a good tournament, but you've got to put it in for us. And I was really impressed with his energy and his legs. He was at his best in that first 20 minutes. And then, yeah, devastating that he got the injury. In terms of the goal, I agree with everything you're saying. He did open it up well, but I thought it was kind of funny how he did it. It was kind of like he went like left and then directly right and then forward. It didn't seem kind of... it didn't seem like intuitive movement, but it definitely worked because, yeah, Johnson was free and that made the defender kind of wonder which one to defend against. Good finish. I think we've said, I remember back in the day, I said it yesterday, I'll say it again. I remember back when we first signed Pat Matissar, the kind of boys on the Extra Inch, the tactical boys who did their scouting on him were just like, he's actually got a really great long shot on him. And then ever since he's been at Spurs, he's just been ploughing them into row Z over and over again, to the point where now when I watch... I listen to the Extra Inch, so they sometimes say, oh, actually, I think his technique for long shots is all wrong. But actually, this one was great because he didn't try and hit it too hard. It was almost like a more guided, Harry Kane-esque into the bottom left-hand corner, and it was a great finish. And yeah, as you said, when he got injured, he was obviously really shocked and worried about it, but he tweeted, I think, last night, saying more fear than injury, I think, looking forward to the AFCON. So he's happy to be going there. Sonny obviously off to the Asian Cup, and Basuma obviously, you know, doesn't get on the pitch anyway, but he'll be at the African Nations Cup as well. And I hope they have good tournaments, but also I hope they all go out in the group stages. Absolutely. There was also another player recently. I can't remember who it was. I think it might have been Richarlison, maybe last season. He also, I remember he went. I think it was just before the World Cup, wasn't it? He went down crying because he thought he was going to miss the tournament. But again, it was a similar situation. And
he was
Veliz
actually
crying yesterday. We love a crying.
We do. Yeah, there's been a lot of injuries to Spurs. So for those next like 30, 40 minutes after Sarr went off, Bournemouth definitely took control of the game. I think it's fair to say. With like Solanke had headers saved, he hit the bar. In fact, it wasn't just that Bournemouth took control. I think during that period they actually had more possession, which is very rare for a team like Spurs, especially this season. How we've been playing to be outpassed basically by the opposition. It's not something that we're used to. Yeah. But did you in that 30-40 minute period or so when they were on top, did you ever feel like they were really gonna take advantage of that, or did you feel comfortable that we were actually defending quite well?
No, I felt absolutely positive that they would score, and I was shouting at the screen. I was devastated about it. I think they got a number of corners. I think they had like 9 corners before we'd only had like 2 or 3. And I was just like, we're just not on the front foot here. And yeah, the Sarr going off really knocked the wind out of our sails. But you got to give credit. Like, we could have collapsed there and conceded, and we didn't. Their finishing wasn't quite there. And actually, that's where I'd say that's the difference in a lot of these games, is do you have players who are elite finishers? And although Richarlison did miss one, the kind of through ball, which I'm sure we'll get to, you know, he did put his next chance away, and obviously Son put his chance away incredibly, and he'd missed a chance before, which I was shouting at him about. But you don't get too many chances, and Bournemouth didn't really take advantage of theirs. I thought Solanke was a handful, looks a good player, but I've been asked before, do you think he'd be the kind of player that Spurs should be interested in? I'm not sure whether he has the personality to play as a number 9 for like a top level, kind of top 6 club. I could be proven wrong. I hope to be proven wrong. I think he's a really good player, and he's done it. He did it in the England unders age groups. He's obviously got all the talent. But yesterday on the big stage at a big time, when they want to have a really kind of big, you know, statement result, he had the chances. The header, he hit the bar. I know with one that was a good block from Ben Davis. But you need if you're going to Tottenham, you need to take those chances when you're ahead, and they didn't. And as a result, you know, we found ourselves 3-0 up in a game where, and Brains here in the watch along was like, I have no idea how we're 3-0 up, and it's true. And that shows that we have the elite finishers that Bournemouth don't.
Yeah, and I think definitely at the time, for sure, when we did get a second wind, obviously a bit late in the game, but just talking about that period where Bournemouth were on top, I felt like they were so intense. We've seen how they've been playing over the last 10 games or so, how Iraola has got them playing such a relentless pressing system, really suffocating the opposition. He likes to squeeze the pitch really high up. And I felt like when they were on top, obviously, they were causing us lots and lots of trouble. In fact, there were times we couldn't even get out our own half. It was really we looked as Andrew was saying on Thursday, we looked a bit leggy at those points. I was wondering, where is his energy going to come from? You know, because I was also thinking, because of that, if Bournemouth get 1, they're probably going to get 2 because of that energy they were putting into the game. Luckily, we were able to just kind of see out that period without conceding, fortunately. But also, I thought there was some good defensive display there. But what I was about to say is, because of the way they play with their relentless pressing, because they didn't take advantage and score, I felt like then they started to look leggy when
about an hour.
Exactly, and then it kind of equaled out. And then once they started to tire, that's when we took full advantage of that. And I think in a weird way, we did something that we haven't been doing that much this season. Is we played a bit more of a transitional game. The chances we were creating a lot more on the counter attack, and I think in a way, yes, obviously in general we like to play possession based and we like to dominate, but it's always good to, in games like this when we are being dominated, to have more strings to your bow and to be able to be effective on the counter attack. And we did create some really good chances, like that Richarlison chance which he snatched at, and then obviously in the last 20 minutes, like that's where the chances were coming from, those transitional moments. And that's always going to be positive when in games where you're off it, you can still be a threat.
I agree. I also think, you know, what you said about us not being able to keep the ball and then winning the ball back incredibly quickly, that was exactly what I was complaining about at the time. Very frustrating. But I do think what yesterday really shows or reminds me of is when we have our full team back, how good we're going to be. Because I feel like a lot of the reason we weren't able to keep the ball and we were losing the 50-50s and Bournemouth found it really easy to press Emerson Royal. They were actually letting Emerson Royal have the ball as much as they could and then pressing him, knowing that then they'd win the ball in midfield from his passing not being kind of really zippy and tight enough. And the midfielders, especially once Sarr went off, Skip, who they could also press, not being good enough on the half turn, right? So that just made me think, when we've got Maddison back, when we've got Romero back, Van der Ven back to sweep anything up behind, when Bentancur's fully fit, when we've got everyone back, none of those things are going to be issues. Like, none of them are going to be issues because Maddison's going to come as deep as he wants to get the ball, and then we're going to trust in our other midfielders to get Maddison the ball in the pockets, and he's going to play people in. It's just going to be... basically what I'm saying is I've forgotten how good it was in those first 10 games sometimes, how beautiful it was to watch, and the fact that we're still winning despite the fact we're not able to do that at the moment is so exciting to me and so interesting. And yeah, sometimes you just got to give props to Bournemouth. I think tactically they did it really well, but they weren't able to keep it up. That 60-minute drop of theirs was visceral. It was very easy to really notice. And that's when we completely rolled them over. But yeah, I think it actually, you're right, it kind of stands us in good stead that they've all had to play Conte ball for the last 2.5 years before Ange came in. So when it does become a transitional game, they know how to do it. One thing I would say is I felt, and maybe this goes against Ange's philosophy, so that's why it doesn't happen. But I felt in that second period of the first half, when we couldn't get out of our own half, why couldn't we just maybe try and drop our tempo a bit and play the ball around a little bit slower and just get people on the ball and make Bournemouth have to work harder? Whereas what we were doing was playing those difficult balls into midfield, trying to tip it round the corner, and we were losing out on the 50-50s, right? But I'd still say that this season is all about, and Ange would say this is all about really drumming into the players that this is the style we want to play and we want to be exciting the whole time. And so it's just another one of those games where we have to deal with our frustrations in the moment because there's a bigger picture. There's a longer term view that this is all about. And he's still finding out whether the players who are on the pitch at the moment are going to be there for the long term. I think Oliver Skipp right now is treading a very thin line as to how long he's going to be around in this Ange ball revolution. Because he's going to get game time and he needs to show that he can do it. And at the moment, Bentancur, who hasn't played for like over a year, came in and showed immediately for me, as he did in those 20 minutes against Villa or whatever, immediately for me that he's got it in the 1 and 2 touch play, the half turn stuff. Skippy is still so clunky on the ball. It might well just be a confidence thing. He's an elite player. He can do it. I'm sure he can do it. But has he got the confidence to do it at this level at the moment? I'm not sure he does. Yeah,
I did really think he was struggling for large parts of that game after he came on, albeit I think there was a bit of a tactical switch with Ange when he brought Højbjerg on. He made it more of a double pivot rather than like a lone six.
Went to a 4-2-3-1.
And I think that did help Skipp, and I think it helped Højbjerg as well in that period of the game, especially late on, to give Spurs a lot more foothold in midfield. And it also, I felt like, helped Giovanni Lo Celso really express himself, and I thought in those last 20 minutes, in those transitional moments, he was absolutely brilliant, bringing the ball forward, and obviously got some really good assists. Some of his passing was absolutely fantastic. A brilliant assist for Sonny's goal as well. I think that was a good tactical switch.
Can you think of another player in the history of football who has a trademark move that is a double-footed slide tackle to try and win any kind of... Gio Lo Celso does it. It's fascinating to me. He does it when it's a 50-50. Sometimes he does it when it's like a 70-30 for him anyway, and he doesn't need to do it.
He'll just double foot.
On wet days, he just wants to... It's not like a 2-footed thing, but it's more like he just wants to slide along the ground and use almost like his body weight as a block on the ball. It's an incredible move that he usually gets it right, but then yesterday he did it and took the player out and gave them a very dangerous free kick, which actually should say... Richarlison was incredibly brave in that, because I don't know if you remember, it's a left-footed free kick, Tavernier. And he puts it the side that Vicario's standing, but he hits it really well. It's going right in the corner. And just as he's hitting it, Richarlison takes a step to his right. And where a lot of players will turn their back, he didn't. He watched it all the way and actually almost guided it wide. Got to give him props, because Richarlison gets a lot of stick. So when he does good things, I'm going to give him the props for it. That was great defending. Yeah, absolutely correct. And going back to Giovanni Lo Celso, I think that as well, outside of the boot, when the ball's more on his right foot, the outside of the boot to the left, that's becoming a bit of a trademark for him as well. And obviously, it was a brilliant assist for Sonny's goal as well, which Sonny finished. And then obviously Richarlison, who we just mentioned, he a brilliant finish from him. And that is also becoming a staple move now, isn't it? Johnson on the right, running down, first time ball across the face, and Richarlison with a first time finish. That's something logically as well. It's going to be very difficult to stop for opposition teams because Johnson is just so quick. It is, and a lot of people have been wondering why Johnson isn't better than he is. I will stick to my guns and say, we have bought potential. He's still raw, but he's doing something, and I'm talking specifically about that ability to, without looking up, play the ball at pace in terms of the cross, but also whilst he's running at pace, first time. It's De Bruyne-esque level crossing, and it's very difficult, and not many players get that right. So the fact that we have that and he's going to improve over the next few years as well is very exciting for the future of Spurs, I think.
Yeah, and it was a brilliant assist for Richarlison again, who actually makes it 5 goals in his last 5 games now. So he carries on his brilliant form. I want to talk a bit about Sonny because it was a bit of a weird game for him. I felt for large parts of that game he was a bit on the periphery. What did have a few chances, but wasn't having his best game. And then he has this one chance in the second half, which he kind of screwed up.
Yeah.
And it just, I think like something flipped with him. And then all of a sudden, in the last 20 minutes, I thought he really came alive. He scored that goal. I thought all of a sudden he found some new confidence in the game. He was really starting to take that game by the scruff of the neck. And I thought he ended the game incredibly strongly. And obviously, when you got that kind of finishing ability that he showed for that second goal, you can never count Sonny out, even if he's having a poor game.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is confidence as well. I think Sonny knows and knew that he'd had not his best few games, even as far back as the Everton game. You know, he got that goal, obviously, but that was kind of more an instinctive thing. Whereas the goal yesterday was more like it actually got, the ball was stuck under his feet and he had to do something really incredible to get it in from that tight angle. And I think that probably just took a weight off his shoulders. I agree, he got better. And like I've said in the last few weeks, I think he's probably carrying a knock, and he's obviously thinking about the Asian Cup as well. And now he can go off there. He's not got injured. And he's got his goal, and he's third in the goal scoring charts in the Premier League?
I think he's joint second with Salah now, yeah.
Joint second, doing unbelievably well. And I hope they do well, South Korea, but I also cannot wait for him to come back because we're going to need him. And I'm sure we'll talk about this more, but it'll be very fascinating to see who Spurs do play on the left over the course of this, starting with Burnley and then at Old Trafford and the rest of January. Yeah,
we'll get into that in a second. There's a lot of key things to talk about there. But just to finish off on the game, obviously we did concede. Alex Scott, boyhood Spurs fan, does come off the bench, and I thought had a brilliant cameo. He scored 1 goal and had another one ruled offside, which in the ground they seem to be taking a long time to look over. I'm sure, was it a tight decision, that header?
I found it scary, actually. I thought it was tight because Pedro Porro, where the cross had come from, Porro had stuck his leg out to try and block the cross. And actually, when they've stopped the line and started drawing the line, you think it might be because he looks kind of offside from where all the defenders are, but you wonder whether on the near side of the camera angle whether Porro has just kept him on. But thankfully not. It was his second goal, the one that was disallowed, was a beautiful header.
Really great header. I think at that moment it was right at the beginning of stoppage time, wasn't it? So they would have had quite a long time to have got back into the game if that counted. But luckily, that didn't count, even though I had a great cameo. We were able to see out the game. There was one incident as well to talk about, and that was with Veliz. Obviously, we made all our substitutions. Veliz came on and very quickly picked up an injury. I'm not sure what it was. Maybe a hamstring. I'm not really sure exactly what. He was in a lot of pain. But I'm not exactly sure what was going on because he was clearly in pain. He was signalling that he couldn't continue. But he seemed to just try and carry on for like a good 4 or 5 minutes after that incident. And it actually led to an incident where Højbjerg had 2 options on a counter-attack, Veliz or Son, both running in. He chose Veliz even though he couldn't walk when Son was obviously through on goal as well. And that was a very frustrating moment. And if Veliz wasn't on the pitch, obviously Højbjerg only has one option and he probably goes for Son. So it probably got to a point where Veliz's presence was hurting us probably at that point as well. And I don't know who to exactly pull the blame on as to why he was allowed to remain on for so long. Because after the game, I was thinking, surely if Ange just puts his foot down and says, you're coming off, that he comes off, surely. But Ange was alluding after the game that he was trying to get him to sit down and come off. And he said, unless I'm going to drag him off, what can I do? He didn't do it. And he tried to play on. And it goes to the character of he said it goes to the character of Veliz because he wanted to help the team. But it was a very bizarre incident, wasn't it?
It was. And I think it showed a bit of naivety from Veliz. He's a young kid. He knew we'd made all our substitutions. So he was like, well, I want to show that I can play through the pain and put my body in the way. But actually, he's just doing more damage to his body at that point. And yes, what he needed to do was just lie on the floor because eventually we would have kicked it out or the ref would have stopped it and then we could have got a stretcher on for him, carried him off. He's a kid. I don't think it would have happened to an older player. I think it is what led to then Ange having almost a fight with the Bournemouth coaching staff and substitutes. My feeling on that is that I think the Bournemouth team, the coaching staff probably thought that Ange was telling his player to lie on the floor to waste time. but actually I think Ange was telling him to do it so he doesn't injure himself more. And that is kind of like a natural miscommunication that if it happened that way, if I was in the Bournemouth kind of side of things, I'd probably think that was for game playing reasons. But it was fascinating to see how quickly Ange saw the red mist and totally lost it. Like he had
to be held back properly.
But it wasn't one of those fake holding backs, I didn't think, where it's like, oh, let me at him. He was really livid with the guy. It was really fascinating. We haven't seen that side of Ange yet. I've always known he's had the dog in him. You know he's got the dog in him, but really fascinating to see that. Australians not slow to really find a way to get at people if they're wronged, and rightly so.
I wouldn't want to get on the wrong side of Ange, that's all I'm saying, 100%.
But, just a bit of naivety, I think, from Veliz. A weird situation, yeah.
For that incident, though, is there any kind of blame do you put on Ange for not being maybe a bit more forceful in that situation, just demanding he lays down?
I don't doubt if he was shouting enough to, so that the Bournemouth coaching staff could hear, then I think he was probably doing all he could. And Veliz was probably, he's a Veliz. All those South American boys at Spurs show that they are, that it's all about heart and passion. And I don't doubt that Veliz was probably just trying to say, or not trying to say, but just being like, I'm going to show how important this club is for me because he's just scored his first goal last week. He just wants to show that he can do it. And I would put more of the blame on Veliz than Ange, is what I'm saying. Yeah.
Fair enough. But look, we got the win in the end. Really, really brilliant victory in the circumstances against an informed team, and as well with Arsenal losing 1 point behind Arsenal now, which is crazy to think about looking at the league table. In terms of in general, obviously we're in a very difficult moment squad-wise, and there's a lot of circumstances surrounding. And it is weird because if you look at our form, I think after the win, we're now the most informed team in the league, 4 wins in the last 5. But when you just isolate our last 4 performances now, Forest away, Everton at home, Brighton away, and Bournemouth at home. Yeah. Obviously, 3 wins in those 4 games. The performance level, though, hasn't been brilliant in those games. No. So when you're assessing this period, obviously we're getting great results. But is there any concern for you about the performance level, or is it just you have to take all the circumstances into account and we're doing great?
Yeah, I think exactly kind of what I said earlier. It's literally just a matter of, can we get through these games at the moment? Especially, Ange said it after the Brighton game, we're having to play all the same players, so they're not getting any rest, and they're not the players that were clearly in the pre-season the best at playing Ange's type of football. Otherwise, they would have been the starters, right? So it's just been a period of time where it's like, what results can you get under this kind of duress? And they've been incredibly impressive because if you look, you brought them up, and you're right, it's really more fun when Arsenal lose. But Arsenal have not really had many injuries, and they are really suffering, and that's because Arteta's been playing the same 11 pretty much, not squad rotating. And it shows to me that I think Big Ange is doing a far better job than Mikel Arteta is this season, and he's not been able to spend £100 million on a player. In fact, he had to sell his best player for £100 million. So that is why some Arsenal fans are completely going insane at the moment and starting to doubt Arteta again. And it never takes them long to start doubting Arteta, does it?
Definitely not.
So let's see what happens there. But no, I think we're just showing the desire to get through it. And like I said, we have to keep showing that desire until kind of end of January, when we've hopefully get a full squad to choose from. And then the style of football could really get back to its best.
Yeah, and to be fair to Spurs, even though the performance level maybe in the last few games hasn't been top, but we're still scoring some really good goals, aren't we? We're still scoring some really good team goals. We're still showing those moments of quality when we really need to. And I think that's also a sign of a good team, even when you're not playing well or you're being second best, but you can still bring out that quality when to get a goal when the occasion calls for it. And I think all 3 of our goals, to be fair, yesterday were really good team goals.
Yeah, completely agree. I think the main difference is, we're just not able to batter teams at the moment in terms of, do you remember that first 20 minutes against Chelsea? Like we were all over them, and in a consistently front foot, just winning the ball back time and time and time again. We're not able to do that at the moment. That's the kind of big difference. And then also, are we able to? I thought that the 4 fullbacks did well yesterday, really well. But in terms of defending at a top level and cover space and stuff like that, we're also not able to do that as well. But no, we are far and above where I expected us to be, and the performances and results in the last 5 games are far more than I would have expected. Like, think about it this way: we won 4 and drawn 1, won 4 and lost 1 of the last 5. we could easily have drawn 2 of them and maybe got a draw against Brighton, but we'd be in a much worse place. So the fact we got 12 points out of 15 and that is really good. And I accept that Brighton loss if you're kind of saying, you know, we lost 1, but we might have drawn a couple of the wins. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's worked out really well for us over the Christmas period.
Yeah, 100%. I think to get the level of points we have, especially going into the Christmas period, you know, in bad form in terms of results, you know, to pick up 4 wins to the last 5, absolutely brilliant stuff. And look, with 3 points off the top.
Amazing.
I mean, does Spurs not get enough credit for being where they are, like in terms of how close we are to the top of the league?
I think we've kind of probably slipped up on kind of come up on the inside a little bit quietly over the last few games. But also, you know, it's worth mentioning Liverpool have got Newcastle at home today. I think Newcastle are in terrible form. You know, anything can happen in the Premier League, but they are far more dangerous at St James's Park than they are away from home. I could see Liverpool maybe putting 3 or 4 past Newcastle, and then they'll be 6 ahead of us. Liverpool have drawn a lot of games, interestingly. They've drawn 6 games and only lost 1. But I would even say Liverpool don't look like they're dominating the league. City are starting to get there or thereabouts, even though they've had players missing. I think we're probably where we should be, but I would also go back to say if that Chelsea game hadn't happened with the injuries and suspensions, we would be right up there.
Yeah, 100%. And let's hope we can get some additions this month as well to really help with the workload. We know now Son is off to the Asia Cup. Postecoglou confirming that he will not be available for the Burnley game. Sarr obviously going to be off to the AFCON with Basuma as well. So a lot of going to be losing even more players now over the next few weeks. So it's going to be very interesting to see how Postecoglou adjusts to that. Obviously, having Bentancur back is a massive bonus in this period, very unexpected as well. But when it comes to how we replace what these players give us, or who's going to come in for Son on the left, who comes in for Sarr in midfield as well. Obviously, we know Bentancur is going to come in for Basuma. If you were Ange and if you just got the players, assuming we don't bring anyone in, if you just got the players at your disposal, how do you manage these next few games?
Well, I mean, I think the Burnley one's interesting because obviously our only experience of Ange in a cup competition so far disappointed a lot of the fan base because he didn't play his strongest team. We don't have a lot of options, I don't think, other than whether two things I'm kind of thinking off the top of my head for this Burnley game. Will he now blood some of those players that people have been asking him to blood? So would Alfie Dorrington get a game at centre-half or Ashley Phillips?
Am I right in thinking Donnelly was stripped off to come on yesterday?
I didn't notice that.
I didn't notice that. Okay, fine.
Jamie Donnelly has obviously had a few cameo minutes, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if maybe Donnelly got a start. But let's say he doesn't. Would Ange be brave enough to play Bentancur, Gio and Kulusevski as a 3 in midfield? It's a very forward-thinking midfield. It would be unbelievably fun to watch, I think. I think it really would. And I guess if that were to happen, then it would be probably, Johnson on the right, Richarlison, and then Brian Hill, I guess, on the left. I'm not really sure what the other options are on the left. There's been a lot of talk of us being interested in getting another winger in January, and you can kind of see why. But, and this is something we talked about the other day, if Ryan Sessegnon or even Perisic were fit, they would be getting minutes now as the kind of left forward role. And actually, I think if you took the defensive responsibility away from Sessegnon, he might have made a good option. I know lots of Spurs fans currently, throwing their old mince pies at me, but he's an unbelievable crosser of the ball, just like Brennan Johnson is, and he's got pace, but also you've got to think his hamstrings. So I don't know. I mean, who do you think will come in on the left? I'm not sure, basically.
I've got a feeling that maybe Kulusevski could get a run on that side, because there was a little cameo when against Newcastle for about 15 minutes. He played Kulusevski on the left and Johnson on the right, and Kulusevski actually looked quite creative in that role. He actually looked quite good. I don't think he was like taking people on, but when he got into like the final third, he was able to obviously got great delivery. He was able to pick someone out, and he created a few chances. I remember he created a really great floated cross for Ollie Skip, who should have scored near the end. So I'm feeling maybe if he goes Kulusevski on the left, Johnson on the right, Rishi up front, and then it would be Bentancur, Lo Celso, and probably Skip, I'm guessing, or Skip or Højbjerg. Yeah. So there's that option. Obviously, you could go really at that attacking midfield, and maybe you could put Brian Hill on the left, and because I don't think he's going to want to move Johnson from the right. That's the thing. I think he's going to want to keep him there.
He shouldn't. I mean, the other option is he brings in Jamie Donnelly as the third kind of central midfielder, and then Yeah, Kulusevski or Johnson. I don't know. That's why I think the Burnley game on Friday night would be interesting to see, because it'll kind of, I think, give an idea of what might then happen for the rest of January, because after that we've got Old Trafford.
I've got a feeling on Burnley he's going to give Hill a go. Just to, he's going to give him a chance and see if he can do it, because he in the games he started, these been very difficult games, isn't it? He started the Etihad, he started against Villa. I can't remember. I think those are the only 2 starts, isn't it? And then I think he got dropped after that. So maybe he's going to say, look, Burnley at home, this is a great opportunity to really show you can, against Premier League opposition, even though it's not the best Premier League opposition, that you can really take the game to them and cause them a lot of trouble. And if he puts him in again from the start and he's still, not doing it, then I think maybe he gets dropped again.
Do you think he should have scored from half a yard out yesterday?
Maybe, just about. I think just about.
It
wasn't as easy as it looked.
Behind him.
Yeah.
It was a tiny bit behind him, and obviously his hair was in his eyes, which I understand. So.
Is that a problem that you've encountered a lot?
The thing is with Bryan Hill, he's obviously such a lovely boy, and he's obviously very talented, but, he's missing one thing extra. So if he had an extra yard of pace, right, then he'd be great. Or if he had an extra kind of foot of height and of physicality, then he'd be great. But without one of those 2 things, I'm just not sure it's going to happen. And it'd be interesting to see. Maybe he will play against Burnley, but he needs to do something that ups his confidence level a lot, because he kind of just does a lot of bustling about and no kind of final ball at the moment or goal.